All right, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are doing the Vail School Board today, and we have candidates Anastasia, Anastasia, I'm sorry.
Tsatsakis.
Tsatsakis, apologies, and Leroy Smith. So what we'll do is I'm gonna ask the candidates to kind of give a little brief introduction. And then I'll have some big questions I'll ask them. And for any readers who want to ask any questions, they can type them in the chat and then we'll filter them in. So for the candidates, I just want to get like, where are you from? You know, where'd you go to school? That type of thing. We'll get into the issues in your platform with the questions. So Anastasia, would you like to start? Could you just tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I can. Hi, everybody. I am Anastasia Tsatsakis. I am a governing board candidate for Vail Unified School District. And I have lived here in Vail for 9 going on 10 years now. And I came from the great state of Nebraska and more recently from Illinois after I married my husband and came here. So I am a realtor and I have been working with school district things for about a couple of years. As everybody knows, it's been a tenuous couple of years, especially with COVID and you know, in school, out of school type kind of stuff. And that's where my interest came in. And that was when our mitigations first started back in right before we went to school, because of course, Vail is a year-round school. We usually start mid-July. And so our first board meeting that I ever attended was back in, I want to say like late May, early June of 2020, when they were putting mitigations back into the school system before school started for us. And not very happy with a lot of the things being put into place, of course. Went and spoke my piece and haven't stopped ever since then. This is something that's been very dear to me. Especially with things as they've progressed over the years. And something that I highlighted to people is that the school board races are just as important as your state or other races that you have, your federal races. Because a lot of the people usually have a tendency to be on the ground floor, which is the school districts, and then they just go up from there sometimes. So this is the year. This is the year that, as everyone has noticed across the country, people have been finally coming back into the fold of the school districts and participating again, because they're now finding that it really does matter what our districts do and what our states do with our funding for the school districts. So it's been a real eye-opener for people, I think, the last couple of years, and even for myself. And I felt now was the most important time to get involved. So here I am, and I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Leroy, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, my name is Leroy Smith. I am a candidate for the Vail Governing Board. I'm a 25-year federal law enforcement retired, former Marine as well. Also, a little bit of my background is I took on the Department of Justice for some national security issues for about 8 years. I've lived in the Vail School District for 17 years. I used to live in Marana, graduated Marana High School. My kids have gone through Cienega, graduated from Cienega High School. I currently have a granddaughter that's in Old Vail Middle School. And my oldest granddaughter graduated a year ago from Cienega High School as well. I was going to look at being a candidate last year, but I've had some surgeries that kind of went south. And then I had another one in January that I became septic, and I was bedridden for about 3 months. So April 1st, I was told I was able to get back up and do things. And April 2nd, I went out knocking on doors, and I had 2 months to get enough signatures for the petition, which I received 489 out of the 213. And I just look forward to being elected to the Vail School Board.
Okay, thank you. And I just remembered, we had 2 other people scheduled to come in today who couldn't. Jennifer Anderson couldn't attend. We have rescheduled for her for the 20th. And then Geraldine Kleber does not appear like she's going to participate. She had some questions she wanted to have the questions beforehand or something like that, but hopefully we can reschedule with her. Anyway, Okay, so one of the big issues in education in Arizona is the voucher expansion, right? The empowerment scholarships. So, you would be in charge or be on the governing board of a public school district. So I want to get from you, do you support the expansion of vouchers? And how do you think that's going to impact the school district and what do you want to do? Let's start with Anastasia.
Okay, I am actually in favor of that, and unashamedly so. I believe that if a parent so chooses to teach their children alternatively, by that I mean putting them into a private school, a charter school, even if they choose to homeschool, whether that looks like just in their own personal home or with a school pod or some other method, I believe that that money should follow the child. I do not, as a lot of people have said in public recently, that it's going to be detrimental. I do not believe it's detrimental at all. And I don't believe, judging from the numbers that we currently have for applications at this moment, that it's not going to really do damage to the funding for the schools as a whole for the state. I believe at this moment, I haven't checked the numbers this morning, but last check over the weekend was about 7,800 applications have gone in. And that's not enough to really destroy anything related to public schools. Public schools are still an immensely viable option for a lot of people, for a lot of personal reasons, or even professional reasons. I truly believe that this is something that needs to remain a choice. I do not believe it's a detriment that the money should follow the child. I know I'm going to have probably a lot of disagreement with that, but the other fact is that people need to understand when they go into thinking about this as a whole, and to remind everybody as well, when a parent or a child, gets that money, wherever they decide to go, whether it's, again, charter, private, or Catholic school, whatever that is, they can still have access to the district options that are still in there, whether it be after school activities, or in our case, we have a school option where if people want to have their children tested, or if they want to do some after school stuff, they still have resource access to their districts. So this is not going to hurt anything by any means. I don't believe it will.
And I just to anticipate a rebuttal question to this is, right now we're at 7,800, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like a week or so ago, we were at 6,500. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to expand. I think a lot of people think it's going to expand a lot. Let's just say that you do like a significant number of kids who go to Vail schools right now take that option of doing the vouchers.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? How would you figure out the shortfall in funding?
Well, what I would need to, it's a little early to speak to that at this point, for the reason that we don't have final numbers. And of those numbers, personally, I do not know how many of those are actual Vail residents for the district. So until I have those numbers, I'd have to remain, non-judgmental in that at this moment. And really, I wouldn't have anything to say because I don't have numbers.
Okay.
So I don't have a way to put pen to paper on that, but that would be something I'd be happy to do in a future moment, and then make a certain decision as to how I would react to that going forward.
Okay. Leroy, it's the same question. You support voucher expansion, and how do you think it's going to impact the district? What would you do about it?
Well, I agree with Anastasia. I think the free choice, the educational program, I think it is beneficial. I think it actually brings a check and balance to the local, like the Vail School District or any other school district, to make sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's, and making sure that they focus solely on the basics of education. I think the reason why a lot of parents are looking for another alternative is due to the fact that many of these school districts, as well as ours, have alluded to gender identity, social emotional learning, transgender. A lot of people are saying, why are we focusing so much on this when we should be focusing on the basics? So I think a parent should have a choice. This is America, and I think by providing the freedom will bring back, I think, the focus necessary in the school districts itself.
Okay, and I think you have a similar answer as Anastasia about, if it does grow a lot and there is a financial impact, how you would negotiate that?
Well, yes. I mean, there's a lot of ways of negotiating, and I agree with her. Right now we don't have all the numbers. We don't have the actual budget that the Vail School District currently has. But then, on the other hand, we don't have the budgets when it comes up to numbers. We have several school districts that pay Vail School District to write their curriculum for them. And there's a lot of funding that's coming from that. Say, Sarita School District. They're paying over $4 million a year for their curriculum to be developed, but nobody knows where that money is, how much is being received from all the school districts and where that money is being spent. So I think there's a lot of ways we have to look at the budget. And I think there's a lot more focus that's necessary to ensure that all funding that we're receiving, not just state funding or federal funding, but all funding, like I said, from other school districts as well.
Okay. All right. Can you all hear my dog barking? Is that distracting?
Yeah. No.
I'm sorry. I'll ask my question and I'll mute. And
That's
then
okay.
it'll be a minute. Someone's walking down the street, Okay, so here's another one. I don't know how big of a controversy it is right now, but for many years it has been one. Standardized testing. What do you think about standardized testing?
Who do you want to start with first?
Let's start with Leroy. Let's go back and forth.
Wow. I don't have a lot of information on that to be able to give an answer today. I really do apologize. That would be something I would have to do a little bit more research on and be able to provide an answer at a later time.
Okay, Anastasia?
I don't have facts to speak to, but I'm not against standardized testing by any means. I'm against abusing standardized testing for the purposes of where do I want to go with this? I think standardized testing is good. But overusing it, as a lot of school districts do presently, hyper testing is how I term it personally. I don't believe that's a necessity. I do believe in benchmarks periodically, as a checkbox to see if students are learning what they're supposed to be learning in their classrooms on a regular basis, kind of like quizzes and things, at the end of certain lessons and what have you, to make sure kids are grasping the concepts and things. But standardized testing, I guess I want to quantify. Are you talking about like the Arizona merits? Or are you talking about just within the districts personally, or?
I'm talking about as a general issue, the use of standardized testing to measure growth and things like that.
Yeah, again, what they call benchmarks, I think is okay. It's appropriate to checkbox things after certain lessons being taught to make sure the children are grasping what they're supposed to be learning at that moment, and maybe to backtrack just to make sure that their growth is going the right direction in the learning process. As a whole, as an umbrella, standardized testing does have its place. But there's been the tendency, my personal opinion, I don't have specifics or anything else to work from, but just having seen it over the last few years and hearing from parents and teachers and staff and such, standardized testing has its place, but I think sometimes there's too much in succession as far as the testing goes. And standardized testing to put everybody on an equal footing, I think is wrong. Because not every child works the same speed, not every child learns the same way. We all know, especially in Vail, we have, our special ed kids and kids we're inclusive, so we integrate our special ed children mostly into our district. So a lot of them are not going to learn, and it wouldn't be fair to put standardized testing on children of that nature just like you would a normal child with a heavier thought process and maybe a quicker learning versus a child that's kind of right there, or someone who's not as able to catch on. I think standardized testing does need to be addressed. I need to look into the principles a little bit further, and what the thought process was as far as who exactly they're targeting that for, because I do believe it can be abused. So in that case, I'm against standardized testing to try to put everybody on the same level. And there's just too much playing into that right now. It has its place, but there's some things going on right now, I believe, with standardized that's an issue, and we need to kind of figure out what that is.
Now we have school safety. Right, so that's been a big issue for a long time, and after the Uvalde shooting, it's a big concern to basically everybody in the country. So we'll start with, I'm sorry, is it Anastasia or Anastasia?
You can go either way, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Anastasia or Anastasia, that's the
All
Spanish way of saying it. It's cool. I'm either way. I'm good.
Right. As Anastasia, sorry. Anastasia, what do you think school safety should look like? What measures should be in place so that kids can be safe when they go to school?
Yeah. As far as in our district, I've been to some other schools too. I know what our district does. I mean, as far as gates and single in, single out type kind of things, you know, the one way in, one way out is okay. And I think school safety is important. We have to understand this is not society of, 15, 20, 30 years ago. We're not in that kind of society anymore. We need to take more steps, I believe. The thing that was really disappointing to me, however, was that Kathy Hoffman received monies to fund SROs, the resource officers for the schools, whatever that looked like, whether it was undercovers or whether it was, uniformed security guards or even their local sheriffs or police departments. I do believe we have to have that presence because of the fact that the schools do not allow anyone to carry on campus, including us as residents here. Of course, we know we have constitutional carry here in the state of Arizona, but we do have laws regarding, how far from a school you can or cannot carry from. And with that, a lot of parents want to know that their children are secure and they are going to be secure in those schools. I don't want schools to be fish in a barrel situations, because that's what they've been. You put a label on the door that says no guns allowed. That just screams, hey, come on over. There's nobody that's armed in this school. That's not true. We cannot have that anymore. The society has changed, and the thought process, this is not about race. And the thing that really kind of drives me nuts about this whole situation is people twist it and turn it into a race issue or some sort of crazy thing. And it's not about that. This is not about appearances. People need their kids protected. They need to know if they drop their child off in the morning and they're there for 6-8 hours a day, some of them even longer if they're in aftercare, right? So we need to have that presence there. This is not about threatening somebody. This is not about a racial discrimination issue. This is a protection issue for children of all ages. I, as a parent, would love to know that there's maybe a sheriff or an undercover off-duty somebody somewhere on campus. They don't even have to look like they're an armed security guard. They don't have to look like a sheriff, fully geared. They just need to be somebody who's present. And we need to take those labels off the doors. We need people to know this school is protected by security resource officers or some sort of notice. Post the notice letting abusers know you are not allowed on this campus. And if you do, pretty much God help you, because we don't want you touching our kids. Mm-hmm. Now, along with that, I'm not saying there's this blanket thing that we want all teachers carrying. We don't want all the principals carrying. That particular piece as well has also been a misstatement in the court of public opinion. Personally, do I want to see that either? No, I don't. I would rather leave that to a professional. But the school districts have to make these choices. And going back to the Kathy Hoffman comment, she had all this money for resource officers, but said she wasn't going to give it to the schools because it's an appearance issue. It's racially stigmatized. We don't want certain schools having armed security guards or police officers on campus because it's a visual thing. No, not when you have a potential person, whoever that looks like, whether they're mentally disjointed or if you've got maybe an ongoing custody issue with a family or something, and someone wants to forcibly take that child off the campus somehow. How are you going to combat that? You just going to let them walk away with the kid, or walk in and just shoot up a room, take a kid and run, or just do it because they can? Or in the case of our high schools, look at Columbine, look at all these other things. No one wants to see that happen again. And unfortunately, this particular issue has gotten shoved under the rug long enough. After Uvalde, I think the thought process really needs to change. Personally, I think it's about probably 10, 15 years too late. But now that we're at that point, yes, I would, as a board member, encourage having either undercovers, off-duty sheriffs, or who, because we have the sheriff's department here in Vail, and Tucson Police Department in some parts, depending on what part of our district falls into. I do believe that security absolutely has to be tantamount, and these parents need to know their parents have to be protected. And this is just across the board, not just in our backyard, but speaking from my backyard, I would love to see one in every school.
Okay, thank you. Leroy?
Yes.
Mhm.
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Sure. So it's, given the issue of school shootings, school safety is very important. What measures do you think should be put in place at schools to keep kids safe?
Well, first of all, most schools have what they call a crisis management contingency plan. It looks great on paper, but functional, it's not. And what I mean by that is that I do agree with the school resource officers. I do believe that we need to increase the technology and also electronic devices throughout the schools. But most importantly, you can have the best crisis management on paper, but if you don't follow through what the expectations are as far as like a command center, and ensuring that everyone that has a place in that command center has been properly trained. I reviewed one of the crisis management for Cienega High School. I worked for them for almost about a year. And I was just at a school board meeting, probably about 3 of them back, and they were talking about the emergency. And the entire school board, the first thing they asked was, well, isn't our first line of defense the sheriff's department? No. Is our first line of defense our principals? No. And the reason why I say that is the first line of defense is every staff member within that institution, within that school district. That means from the security monitors need to be properly trained. They need to be properly given proper equipment. There needs to be proper equipment maintained for emergencies throughout the school and throughout all schools within the district. And the main thing when you come down to it is this. You have FEMA and you have Homeland Security training for school districts. And I could reassure you that over 90% of the school districts within our school district alone have not been provided that training, have not been mandatory for that training. And that was 5 years ago. And they're still asking the same questions 5 years later. So as a school board member, that would be a major emphasis for me. I'm also a certified crisis management for handling those types of situations. So with that being said, and what I mean by that training is 100, it's called FEMA training 100, it's called FEMA 200, all the way up to 700 for school districts. And that's not happening. And that scares me, to be honest with you, because every child that comes there should be feel secure. Every teacher that comes there to work should feel secure. So yes, school resource officers is I believe should be mandatory. I believe that the security monitors should receive additional training for situational emergencies. I believe each teacher should at minimum receive either FEMA or Homeland Security 100 training. The other thing that scares me is when you hear a school board mention, well, when we do these drills, we need to make sure that we don't have our kindergartners, first graders, second graders, third graders participating in these drills. That's far from the truth. Because if the children are not participating during these emergency drills, then they're definitely not going to be prepared. And the responses that you're going to receive is going to be more mentally damaging to those children than it would if we actually had them participate all the way through, just like anyone else we would expect. So that's where I kind of stand with it.
Okay. All right, so we also have, there has been recent reports about learning loss that due to the pandemic, I think it's, nationwide, it's there's been some learning loss. I don't know what the specifics are, it's Vail, but Leroy, do you have any thoughts on how you could bring the Vail students back up to speed?
Well, as far as bringing them back to speed, I think one thing, we got to get away from, we've been away from COVID for what, 2 years now? And everybody still wants to blame COVID for why we have the learning loss. I believe a lot of the learning loss is because we're not focused on it. We're more focused on, the social emotional learning. We're more focused on getting counselors, additional counselors within the school district. So with that being said, I think we just need to get back to the basics, and we need to focus 100% in that direction. And that's where I stand on it.
Okay, my dog's going again.
That's okay.
Anastasia, the same question.
Okay. Yes, learning loss. That's a big pet peeve of mine. And especially with these kids effectively in the high schools, at least with our district. I kind of, I hear things from other parents and people from outside districts, but speaking for my own, I know that our high schoolers literally lost about 2 years worth of learning. Let's be real about that. They really did. The Arizona merits were given in 2021 in our district. I haven't seen 2022 scores yet because they are still not out. I keep checking at the Arizona Department of Education. Those are not out yet. I am waiting anxiously to get those numbers to compare. Right now, I can only speak to 2021, but I can tell you our district had an overall of 66% on ELA and math in our district as of 2021. So that was during the course of 2020 into 2021 when we ended. That was where we landed, was 66% overall. Every high school in our district failed with ELA and math. They had 40 and 50% respectively in their scores, and yet they still had graduations. I'm not understanding that. And the complaints that I heard from both students and parents who were immensely concerned was during the online learning, which, by the way, was a very eye-opening and telling tool for every parent who was online, not just here, but across the country. Everybody knows what was going on. You heard the stories, crazy things, not so crazy things. My particular situation, thank God my son had a great teacher for this kind of started at the end of third grade, and then into the fourth grade was primarily when this was all focused on. He had a great teacher in fourth grade, and thank God for that. And he really helped these kids a lot. And I do believe that his kids succeeded immensely. I do believe it comes down to the teacher during that time. But unfortunately with our district, 40 and 50% passing, and yet we still had graduations at our high schools. There were some outstanding kids in our high schools. I am not going to begrudge that. We had fantastic kids that just despite everything, no matter what happened with their teachers, absentia of teachers online, they could not get a hold of their teachers. Teachers online at the elementary and even at the lower level, middle school grade levels were not really getting the attention that they needed. This is a personal situation. Personally, I think kids learn better when they're in a physical environment. Granted, there are kids that can absolutely fly through online learning. Some of them are self-motivated, others are not so much. And this goes K through 12. Of course, the little kids, you know, before they get into 3rd or 4th grade, they're not going to be able to work a computer or really understand this stuff. You know, they're just going to do what they're going to do. The parents probably maybe had to go pick up packets or something. You know, quarantine versus no quarantine. There's no excuse for any of this. Teachers, for the most part, did what they could. Now, I will say our district did step up to try to run programs that were going to help our students, despite the fact that we were going to have to be online for a time. They came up with a hybrid program. I was at board meetings when they were talking about these hybrid programs and when they were developing them. And I thought, okay, this is really awesome, because where TUSD and, you know, all over the state, schools were shutting down and were not even doing anything. They had no plan. They had no backup plan. Why not? Right? Our school jumped in, our district jumped in and handled it the best way they could. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Did the teachers have to pivot and go from doing what they've always done, which is in person, into some sort of strictly online or doing into hybrid? Yes. Were they doing extra duty? Yes. Did that affect their ability to help these kids? Yes, I do. I truly, truly believe that. And unfortunately, the IEP kids, the kids that had special needs, children that really needed that in-person tactile, facial working, face-to-face comprehension, the way they did this best, that was totally lost with a lot of our IEP kids. And I'm devastated at knowing that that even had to happen. That to me was just, and this was everywhere, not even just in our backyard, but it was everywhere. Mm-hmm. There's no excuse. And again, we're here in 22, almost into 2023, right? You can't blame COVID anymore. There's no COVID excuse. This is why I'm really interested in looking at how we progressed from 2021 to 2022. And this goes to your standardized testing part. Was everything equal? I don't believe so. I saw the numbers of students. I looked at everything. I broke it down school by school in our district. I did a really comprehensive. Could I have gone further? Yeah, because Department of Education segments it out even deeper than that, but I didn't go there. I just looked at, you know, which school had passing grades, which ones didn't. The ones that received their A and A+ ratings are the ones that I saw that had received the 80-85% scores or better. And congratulations to those schools. And that tells me these teachers really put it out there to help these kids get where they needed to go. I am not disparaging that at all. Absolutely not. What I am really upset with as a whole, as a body, our district just didn't pull it together. You had bases who sat at about 85%, and we have some of the highest ranked education in our district. We have some of the best resources in our district. We have great teachers in our district. We have awesome things going on in this district. No amount of money you throw at this can help those scores. I'm still trying to determine why we have those scores. And there really just is no answer for that. And it's inexcusable. You know, learning loss is just going to be that at this point. We needed to figure out what went wrong, online, not online. It doesn't really matter anymore. What was the failures? How are we going to proceed going forward without the excuses? That's the question really that needs to be answered here. The learning loss was inexcusable for me. I didn't appreciate the fact that our kids lost so much being in a contact personal environment, and they lost so much. And these kids in our high schools, especially who were getting ready to put out there and put them into the working environment, that was devastating to see and to know and to hear, and the depression and the anguish that these kids had to feel. I can't even imagine what their online studies were like, but if it was anything indicative of these scores, it makes me really, really sad. I don't ever want to see that again out of our district or any district for that matter. We cannot fail these children any longer.
So one of the things that Vail's gonna have to deal with, that every school apparently in the entire country is gonna have to deal with, is teacher retention.
Yes.
So it seems like there's a shortage, so to speak, of teachers. If you're elected to the governing board, what do you do to make sure that the Vail district has enough teachers?
What I'd like to do is I would like to work with some of these teachers. Some of these teachers in our district, I'll be honest with you, they've been here 19, 20 years in the district, and that speaks volumes to some of that retention. These people just love this district so much. And actually, I was in a board meeting not too terribly long ago where we have students, former students of the district, of the 135 teachers that we did hire recently to come in, a good bulk of them were former students of the Vail School District. And I was really thrilled to hear that. They're coming back to pay it forward, and I'm thrilled about that. And this is the way it should be. We really need, well, and you know what feeds into that the most? I'm gonna throw the money out there because it is about the money. I'm really not happy, however, with how the Vail district is handling the monetary situation with the teachers. I have been speaking out about that for quite a while over the last year. I've even offered to work with one of the board members in seeing how we can find a solution. That never happened, but I offered it.
Just to quickly, just to clarify, what is it that you object to with the financial, with regards to the school board, the finances, and the teachers? What did they do wrong?
What they did wrong, look, I'm not on the board. I can't purport to know what the discussions have been in executive sessions. I cannot speak to that. What I can speak to is what I have heard in board meetings discussed about teacher pay. The teacher pay gap is so small right now with the Vail district. It's literally within $1,000 or $2, $1,000 to $2,000 difference between the experienced versus the not experienced, and they have categories, of course, as every district does, related to the levels of how the teachers are paid. With everything having been considered and things going on with, having been in and out of the schools and things like that, I think it got missed. I think it got a little bit pushed back. And of course, I am going to mention that some of this has to do with legislature. When the state passes their budgets, the budgets that come down to our district specifically has an effect on that as well, because we don't get federal funding for teachers. We only get funding for through propositions and things like that. Give me 2 seconds here. I'm sorry.
Sure. And we're going to wrap up real quick too.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And that is, it comes down from a few places. It has to do with the state budget, and it has to do with our local budget, and with the $15 wage increase and everything like that playing into things. I don't know that it was really ever fully addressed on, because they knew about the $15 wage increase a couple of years ago when it was coming down. So again, I don't know what the backdoor discussions were, but I can tell you from what I personally hear at these board meetings, I just don't know that it was really fully handled properly. And with legislature, we have to deal with them as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it needs to come up. We have to pay our teachers better. Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we've been doing this. We're on like 40 minutes here. So how about we do your final statement? Why should people vote for you? Whatever you'd like.
Well, I wanted to first of all thank everybody for coming online today. I know everyone's got work and other obligations, so I really want to take a moment to thank, first of all, the Arizona Daily Star in allowing us to be on here today. Mm-hmm. I want to thank everybody that was online, and I hope this finds its way out to the masses. What I really want to get across to everybody, these school board races, this is the year of the school board race. This is the single most important race that we can have in this state and across the country. Parents are now finally realizing, myself included, that we really have to pay closer attention to what our school boards are or are not doing, both for us as a community and for our students. It's really important that we come back into the fold. For too long, I think people have been very complacent. We are all guilty of that, including myself. I'm not going to take that off of me. But after having seen what's happened to our children in the last couple of years, these agendas that have found their way, that have become more important, in my opinion, than learning in some cases, is inexcusable. We have to get back to the standards. And all of these things that we discussed today, Kurt, is very, very important. And we cannot lose sight of this. Our children are literally the future of our schools. We are on rescue missions in some cases to save our children. And this is something that we do have to work through. As a community, I am more invested than ever to bring our community back into our yard, into the school board meetings, to be more involved in the committees that are available in our school district. For too long, I think the community has not been aware or been told that they have the opportunity to do these things. And too long, it's been the same old, same old. It's time to change that. And we need to redirect, and we need to go back to doing what's best, teaching our children proper methods of learning and staying focused on that. Now's the time. And I look forward to their vote in November. I truly hope that people will vote for me and we can get a fresh perspective. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for coming by. Really appreciate that. And also thank you to all the readers who showed up and all the readers who are going to watch this later on. Let's see here. We got coming up, we have September 13th at noon. We have Val Romero for TUSD. September 14th at 10. We have Jennifer Ekstrom, also for TUSD. And then on September 15th, we have Amy Bola, Amy Kraus, and Gina Memert, who are running for Catalina Foothills School District Governing Board. All right. Thank you so much to everybody, and I hope you have a good day.
All right.